Hey there, I'm Rachel Ehring, and you're listening to the Top Music Piano Podcast. Get inspired as we discuss creative resources, trends in piano pedagogy, ways to grow your income and streamline your studio, and new ways to engage your students each week. If you are a teacher who wants to go beyond the method books to create an innovative studio that fosters lifelong music makers, you've come to the right place. Hello, piano teachers. Happy May if you are listening to this episode when it first comes out. I can't believe it is May already, and we are gearing up for spring recitals and then summer break here in the US. Today, we are going a little off course from our monthly topic of studio branding, but I really loved getting to know the guests that I have on the podcast today, and I think you're going to enjoy our talk as well. I'm talking with Megan, who runs the website verypiano.com. which has all kinds of resources for piano teachers, but we also talked about her studio and how she runs a pedagogy training program within her studio. So I know some of you are going to be interested in that part of our chat as well. Here's a little bit about Megan. Very Piano is run by Megan Desmarais, owner of a bustling piano studio in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Besides running her studio, where she instructs dozens of students of all ages with the help of a team of student teachers, Megan created Very Piano in 2013 as her resource for all things piano teacher related, and Teach Preschool Music as a resource for music teachers wanting to branch out into teaching the youngest learners. Megan studied piano at the University of Tulsa with Anna Norberg and at Wichita State University with Dr. Sylvia Coates and Dr. Andrew Trechak. She trained with Deborah Perez to teach her recreational music making program for adults and has completed additional training in early childhood music and development. She is a nationally certified teacher of music through the Music Teachers National Association and is also involved in her local Music Teacher Association, where she serves as the secretary. Megan likes to credit her children, Sophie, Paul, and Pax, with helping inspire an even greater love of music and teaching. Here's my interview with Megan. Hi, Megan. Welcome to the show. I'm really excited to get to know you today and hear about the amazing products that you have to offer piano teachers. Could you start out by introducing yourself and tell us a little about your piano teaching business?
Yeah, thanks for having me today. I'm so excited. Okay, so I've got two facets of my business. One is that I run a pedagogy training studio that's actually located here in my house. And I saw a need for young musicians to have pedagogical training that in our area, there's no university that offers that. So I was just noticing that the music students that were graduating from here were not having any means of actually being trained how to teach. So that was something that I observed probably over 10 years ago. And in the last probably like 8 or so years, I've developed a program where the teachers, I recruit college students we have about 3 different universities, and they come and teach with me in my studio. So together we have about 100 students, and I work very closely with them. So I consider my pedagogy students my top students that I devote my time to. And then I'm training them. They're teaching the students that come into our studio as well. So that is a large chunk of what I do. And then I also run a couple websites online. I have verypiano.com, which is a resource hub for piano teachers. And we have an online shop that sells physical and digital products. And then I also run teachpreschoolmusic.com, which is specifically for teaching preschoolers.
So I didn't even know about the pedagogy training part of your business. So if you don't mind, I would love to hear just a little more about that. Are these like piano performance majors that you found?
It's a mix. I would say more often I get music ed majors or BA music, and then just a variety of I get a lot of amazing musicians that are kind of in a gap year of like kind of trying to figure out what's next. And actually, like I have one right now that was one of my very long-term students that I started teaching him as a young child, and he started school, like university program, and is sort of in between right now. So he's a fantastic teacher. And then I've got a few that like did music in a community college setting, and then came to me. And so now they're teaching and they're kind of deciding what that next step is beyond community college. So,
And how do you find these students? Is it mostly word of mouth at this point, or are you going out and actively finding them?
it is a lot of word of mouth, but I've made a lot of connections at each of the universities. And I find that in different seasons, the different ones are more open to working with me and talking to me about this. But in general, the professors that I reach out to are very supportive of giving their students a very practical opportunity. And it really supports what they're doing in their university work, that they're also learning a job, a trade alongside what they're learning at school. So I've guest lectured in their classes. So that was kind of how I got connected at one of the universities. And I just try to regularly reach out to the professors at the different programs and just make sure that they know what I'm doing and what I'm offering, and that I'm not trying to pull them away from that program in any way. I'm really trying to support what they're doing even more and equipping their students to be even more marketable when they graduate.
Yeah, it sounds like a really great opportunity for them, and also for you to have quality teachers that are coming in who you're training to help teach all of these 100 students. That sounds amazing. I'm guessing there's some teachers who are listening who might be interested in learning more about this. Could you tell us just maybe a little bit more about how you train them? I'm guessing you're hiring these students. Is that how it works, or how does it all work?
Yeah, I make it known really upfront, though, that it's to treat it kind of like an internship program or an extension of their university work. So I don't want them to think that they're just showing up here to teach and they can just do their own thing or do whatever that they want, that I am here to support them and to mentor them. And I've standardized the way I teach as much as possible so that I can teach all of them to teach in a really similar way. And that really works well practically in the studio as well, just so that I try to keep the same students with the same teacher for the entire school year. But just the nature of college schedules, that sometimes they have to switch class times or things like that. So if we do have to shuffle teachers or students around, they always, what they're learning doesn't change in the way that they're learning it. So, and then if a teacher just has to sub or fill in for another teacher, there's a lot of continuity between what they're learning and teaching.
That makes a lot of sense. Are you using, or are they using a specific method series?
I primarily use Way Cool Keyboarding.
I do not know that one.
Have it right here.
Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it was designed, it's a recreational music making approach by Deborah Perez and Will Bailey. And it's meant for it to be a group situation. And I have taught it primarily in a group situation, but I've also taught it privately. And I've found that I've just sort of struck a nice balance right now where we teach it in a private setting, like one-on-one with students, but then they can play things as a group. So it kind of gives us options, that it teaches chord charts right from the beginning. So a lot of the songs will have something notated and a chord chart to play along with it. So it works out well that if you have two students of a similar level and they're working on something around the same level, or they know the same chords, they can play something together. So I actually don't split up my groups by ages and levels. They're all mixed level, just because I have so many sibling sets that come together. And then also, I just think that sounds like a scheduling nightmare to try to match up all the exact same kids at the same time. So they're all kind of working through the same type of songs. And then it just works out well that if someone's playing this certain song and someone else is here that knows it too, they can play together.
Okay, so this interview has already taken a completely different turn that I wasn't expecting, but that's good because I love hearing about it. I think it's really interesting. But I would love to go back to you and your background a little bit. How did you become a piano teacher? What did your maybe early lessons look like? And how did you get here to where you are today?
I took piano lessons all growing up through elementary, middle, high school. I also took harp and violin lessons. And When I was a senior in high school, my harp teacher went on maternity leave, and she asked me to teach a few of her students just to keep them going while she was on maternity leave. So that was kind of my first taste of teaching, and I really loved it. And so while I was in college, I found a teaching job at a local studio. And at that time, I was very much reinventing the wheel and just kind of figuring it out as I went. And looking back, they were probably pretty ugly, messy piano lessons. But I really enjoyed the whole process and what I was doing. So that kind of took me in the direction of getting a master's in piano pedagogy. And while I was there working on that, I think that really it opened my eyes to just how broad and diverse this field is. And that I think a lot of piano teachers, and I was very much in this camp, we kind of start going down this path of like, well, this is the way that I was taught, and that's all we know. And I think it's very limiting just because your past piano teacher is just one person and you are just one person, and you each have a unique way of doing things and a unique perspective. But then when you start teaching, you're exposed to all the other ways of doing things. So I think it's just really important for teachers to have all the tools needed to teach all the different types of students, and not just, well, this is always the way I've done it and this is how my teacher did it.
Yeah. Oh man, you're preaching to the choir. It's so true. Like figuring out how to get that knowledge base when you've only been taught one way, I think is a challenge for teachers. And it's really one of the missions of this podcast is to show teachers other ways and other methods and techniques to use. I'm curious, do you have a favorite age to teach? It sounds like you teach all ages from preschoolers to adults.
I do, yeah. Gosh, and I love every one of them. So I think they all bring something unique. Like I really love the adults just because they kind of use their piano lessons as therapy, and you just get there's so many great conversations that happen at the piano with them. But then the little ones too are just so fun, and like those beginners that just have all those light bulb moments one after another, like that's exciting. And then I kind of have a soft spot for middle schoolers because I find that they often we don't give them enough credit, and they are just developing into these really amazing little people that they I find that they really thrive one on one a lot of times. So that you hear like school teachers being like, oh, middle school, that's so rough, but then it's like you work with them one on one and they're totally different, and that's sometimes they're thriving in that environment. So yeah, I can't pick just one. I and honestly, I think I mentioned I kind of consider my college students my own students as well. And I love working with them through this big life transition that they're in the middle of. And a lot of them, like, will finish lessons for the day and they just stay here and talk for another hour. And they just want to kind of run all the things by me. And I love that. And I really appreciate that they respect me and are able to share those things with me. So
Yeah, it sounds like you're in a really unique position, and I kind of want you to be my mentor now. Like you're so fun to talk to, and I feel like I could learn so much from you. Do you have any advice for teachers teaching preschoolers? I know a lot of our listeners are maybe they've been doing it for a while or thinking about getting into the preschool age. What tips do you have for them?
well, you they can go to teachpreschoolmusic.com and find tons of resources, but I think my two biggest tips are to not treat them as miniature piano students. And that was kind of a trap that I fell into early on, is that I thought, like, if I'm teaching a 3 or 4 year old, oh, they're just a little tiny piano student that needs to sit on the bench and do piano student things. And that is not at all how it works. So on the flip side of that, I would highly recommend using as much movement as possible with them and as little bookwork as possible.
Yeah. And I think we also have to kind of manage the parent expectations because I think sometimes the parents think, oh, they're going to be able to play songs after a week or two.
Yes.
And sometimes that is not at all what happens, but it's still, I think, so valuable to them. And I've seen when those little preschool piano students get into the private lessons, they're at a much better place than if they hadn't had those preschool experiences. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that it's just such an important time to lay a really strong musical foundation for them. So when I'm teaching a preschool music class, I try to just pull in as many foundational skills. And I think through when I have a brand new piano student sitting down at the piano, what are things that I want them to be able to do? Like I want them to be able to keep a really good steady beat. I want them to be coordinated and to be able to work with their hands, and just have a really basic sense of geography of the piano, like where is the high, where is the low. And that was something that surprised me early on with piano students is that they'll flip high and low often. And so that's something that I reinforce over and over with my preschoolers that like, what do high notes sound like? And what do low notes sound like? And it sounds so basic, but it's something that like it needs to be taught. You have to do it.
Even teaching right and left hand. Oh my goodness. Like for preschoolers, that's huge. And if they go into piano lessons knowing their right hand and their left hand, it puts them so far ahead of a student who doesn't know. Okay, those are really good. That's some really good advice. So, when I started my original podcast, it was dynamic piano teaching. My idea for that podcast was to invite on guests who are selling some kind of product or resource for piano teachers because I just saw all of these amazing teaching tools out there and I wanted to highlight all of those things. So, now this podcast is a little different feel. It's a little more broad and we do different topics, but sometimes I still like to bring on the creators of the fun things, which is one, you are one. So tell us about your products that you've created for teaching piano and yeah, what do we need to know about them?
Yeah, so I created verypiano.com over 10 years ago, and it's sort of morphed into a few different things over the years, but primarily these days it's a hub for piano teachers, just a lot of resources of like sheet music suggestions, pedagogy ideas, different ways to teach different things. But it also includes an online shop. And in that shop, we have digital and physical products. So about a year ago, we took over Easy Notes, which is a very long-standing music education tool business. So we offer Easy Notes on verypiano.com. I've created a curriculum with it includes we call it piano progress pins. So it's little pins that students are earning as they're achieving different milestones in their piano lessons. So those are on the website. And then we have a lot of digital products, like assignment books and assignment book pages and little composition activities and all kinds of things just to help make teaching easier. And then alongside that, we also have tons and tons of preschool music lesson plans.
Nice. Okay, so we're going to dive into a few of these. One of the things I saw on your website that I had never seen before in this context, at least, was the learning style inventory. And I thought that was really unique and such a great idea. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, so I developed that a few years ago because I was finding that just kind of like what we've already talked about with like, there's so many different ways to teach students and types of learners and types of teachers that it was helpful to have as much information about that as possible when I was training my teachers. And I was also just getting some feedback from parents that some of them would tell me things like, oh, well, their teacher said don't take the repeat. So now they never take the repeat. And so I was like, oh gosh, they're being super literal. Like that maybe in that one lesson, there wasn't time to take the repeats. And the student interpreted that as don't ever take the repeats again. And so it made me realize, like, I think with some kids, you have to spell out exactly what you want them to do, or they're not going to do it. And then it kind of got me thinking on the other side, there's students that like you give them just a little bit and they run with it and they're going to go way above and beyond. And it like, how do you know when you have that kind of which one you have? And it can take, I know for me personally, it can take over a year to really get to know a student's learning style, just working with them every week. And then in addition to that, I also observed that sometimes and I think as piano teachers, we get a really up close personal look at how students are learning, and we might observe like learning disabilities or learning struggles in students. And a lot of times I feel like I'm sitting here observing them, but I've never gotten any official information from parents on it. And it made me realize like sometimes they just don't have a way to share that information with you. And if you can get that information up front, it would be so helpful to know that. just that it might affect how you teach them or give you different ideas of things that would be helpful to the student. Yeah, so I found that it's really helpful to hand that out at the beginning of the school year or anytime really, just to get a better sense of who you're working with and how they thrive and how you can help them be successful.
So is it an assessment that the parents fill out? Is that what it
Yeah,
is?
and actually there's kind of two parts to it. There's an assessment that the parents fill out, and then I created a page as well that's called my learning superpowers, that I just had the students keep it in the front of their binder, and it's kind of a big picture glance, like, are you visual or are you auditory? And I found that component of learning alone, it makes such a big difference in how you go about a piano lesson. I found that my visual learners, they like a written assignment. They like you to write things down for them. But the auditory learners are never, ever going to open their assignment book. And it's like, you can't get mad at them over that. It's just like, that's how their brain is built. But I found that if I have them recite what we did during the lesson, at the end of their lesson, say, okay, tell me what we worked on today and tell me what you're going to practice. And if they say it out loud, that kind of replaces having to write an assignment for them. But I'm visual, so I love the assignment books, and I write in them no matter what, just because it helps me. And once I've written it down, I usually remember it, and then I like to be able to refer back to it from week to week. But I've found that, like, a lot of those auditory learners, they don't even bring it back. And then it's like, I never see it again. And I'm like, what are you actually practicing? And so I've found that I need to coach them on how to talk through what they're practicing so that we can be on the same page. So that was something that for a long time, it was just a source of frustration, that it's on the surface that appears to be like a disorganized student that's not ever bringing their assignment book, but really they're just wired totally differently than us visual learners that are attached to this paper in this book.
And I love what you said about giving parents an opportunity to share about their child, because I think that's really important. I have found at the conservatory where I work, if one of my piano teachers or music teachers comes to me with something that's going on with a student, sometimes I'll go to the classroom teacher because we work closely with the school there. And never is the classroom teacher surprised by what I say. Like, they never say, like, oh, well, they have perfect attention in the classroom. I don't know why they wouldn't, it's never a surprise. So I think the more information we can get up front from parents, it's really helpful in the lessons. We can start a little farther along in the process than trying to discover all of those things, like you said, over a year's time or more, sometimes, to make these discoveries that are probably already known to the other people in their lives. You mentioned the Easy Notes products, which I actually wasn't familiar with them until I found them on your website. Maybe other teachers are, but I recently ordered some of those from you, and my students have been loving them. I just got them, I think, last week, so we haven't used them very much. But
And so remind me what you got.
I got the little, well, I don't know what they're called, but they're like the little note tiles it has the staff notes, and you put them on the piano on the correct notes. And then I got the staff board with the little magnets and the markers. I realized that in our conservatory, my teachers upstairs had like some magnetic boards and stuff, but I didn't have one in my office that I could just pull out. So I was excited to get that. For whatever reason, right now, a lot of my students are working on reading the notes on the staff. And it's some of these students I inherited. So like they play at a little higher level, but I've realized that they don't actually know their note names very well on the staff. And sometimes even on the keyboard, like I'll say play, where's an E? And they have to struggle to find it. So I've really enjoyed having some ways to teach them that doesn't feel like babyish, I guess. So tell us a little about the Easy Notes and how you've used them in lessons.
Yeah. So our main products are the magnetic staff boards. We have a large one and a small one. So the small one is like 9 by 12. So it just kind of fits on a lap. That's a great one to take to the piano. And then our larger one is like 18 by 24. So that one can hang on a wall or sit on a music stand. And that's great to use like in a group setting where you want everyone to be able to see it better. or for smaller hands, the magnets are bigger on that one. So the younger kids usually work well with those magnets. And then our other really popular product are scale blocks. And if you haven't ever gotten your hand on a set of scale blocks, you're really missing out. They're completely magical. Students will learn all of their scales in a matter of minutes. And it's something that I just keep mine right by the piano all the time. And anytime we're talking through scales or circle of fifths or theory or anything, we get them out. And pretty much any student that starts using them, they want to get their own set. They want to take them home and set them on their piano and start working with them. So
is it just blocks with the letters and the sharps and flats on?
yeah, I have a set right here.
Which our listeners can't see, but you can show me.
So it's wooden blocks. And then the set is really nice because it's magnetic. So the blocks actually stick together. And then so one side has sharps, and sharps are red, and the other side has flats. Flats are blue. So you set up a scale, and there's an algorithm that you follow, and everyone can learn it really fast, but it's basically the circle of fifths. So you count 5 blocks over. So if you have a C scale set up, you count the 5th block, which is G, and then you move that to the front. So now you have G all lined up. And then you flip the last block, and that becomes your sharp. So the F becomes sharp. So previous to this, and the way that I was taught, and my teacher was fantastic, but I did like 1 scale per week. And she was like, we're going to do G major, and here's your fingering. And it was a very rote situation where I had to memorize where my finger 4 went in every scale, which I've learned is some people do it that way, some people don't. But at one point I thought that was the only way to learn because that's how I was taught. So when I started teaching, I also drew out scales to be this long ongoing thing of like, you learn 1 key a week and you master that scale. But when you set up your scale blocks, you can teach all 12 major keys just in a matter of minutes. And the students can flip through them really fast of like, they just get that pattern and they're like, okay, now we're on to D, and D has 2 sharps. Now we're on A, and A has 3 sharps. So it's like very visual. It's very kinesthetic. I've never had a student not learn their scales with scale blocks. So
that's really cool. I had never thought of scales in that way. Okay, I'm still like processing the flip over the last one and it's the sharp. That's really cool. I'm going to have to try that. Okay. Do you have other favorite games or products that your students love?
You know what? We're so big on games around here. So, and I love supporting all of the other teacher creators that have so many wonderful products out there, but we've pretty much turned every classic childhood game into a music game around here. So we've got our Rhythm Jenga and our Note Candyland, and we're doing Julie Duda's Yeti and My Spaghetti this week. Yeah. So I don't know if we have a favorite because we play them all and we love them all.
Okay, I have to ask, do you have any tips for organizing all these resources? Because my office is full of stuff and I use like probably 10% of it because it's just not well organized.
Yeah, I started getting like those big zipper bags that you can get on Amazon to put games that have like lots of like flashcards or pieces or just things that go together. So I try to like use those and sort of like file them together. But yeah, it's easy to forget about things that aren't just like right in front of your face all the time. So,
and then you go and buy something new because you forgot you had something that would work. At least that's what I do.
I try to kind of cycle through my games regularly. So I'll, every few weeks, I'll just sort of like look through all of them and be like, oh yeah, I forgot we had this one, and pull that one out for the week. So yeah, I try to like be intentional about changing them up and not just playing those favorites that the kids ask for over and over.
Then I'm also curious, I know you mentioned that you do some group lessons, but do you have any tips for fitting everything into the lessons? I know that especially with teachers who are teaching 30-minute private lessons, it's hard to fit all these extra fun things in, even though they're so valuable.
Yeah. And actually, that was sort of what motivated me to switch to a group format. And I've tried a lot of different things over the years, but I've really settled on this hybrid group private lesson format that I'm in right now. And I think it's really the best of both worlds because I don't know, I will just forever love that one-on-one time that you can have with a student. So I love group learning opportunities, but I can't completely take that away. So I do like to keep that one-on-one time, but when they're here for the full hour, they're with the teacher for about half the time. And then the other half of the time is when they're playing the games, they're using apps, they're sight reading, they're practicing. And that's when we get to like pull in all the other fun stuff. And I do try to be pretty intentional throughout the school year of kind of we'll go through a season where we're all studying our notation really well and like all the different levels. Some students are just studying like what are the notes on the keyboard, and some are studying just what are middle C notes and what are notes on the staff and what are ledger line notes. And so I found a lot of ways that we can find like multi-level situations where even if you have an advanced student and a beginning student, they can still learn those things together.
Gotcha. So with your groups, you typically have more than one teacher there at a time teaching the groups?
Yeah, so it's not like a traditional group setting where they're all doing the same thing at the same time. I have, in most of them, I have 3 to 4 of my college student teachers here with me. And so the student teachers are all doing a lot of the one-on-one lesson time. And then I actually have a high school senior. This year, she's working every hour that I teach, which is really awesome. But she's our professional game player. So the kids just sort of cycle through. They'll sit with her for a little while and play a music theory game. And then she's just really great about moving them onto something else. When they're done with that, she can get them set up with an app. When their teacher's ready for them, they'll move over with the teacher. So they're kind of in constant motion while they're here. They're just doing a little bit of everything. And I found that really works well. I used to find that in my private teaching situation, the more I asked them to do at home, the less they would get done at home. So if I say like, try this app at home or do these theory pages or do these extra things, a lot of times that stuff never comes back and you never hear about it again. So I figured the more of that we can just squeeze into this hour, the better.
Absolutely. I find that too. Like they can be so excited about it in the lesson. And so you're like, oh, good, they're going to play this game at home or whatever. And then it doesn't happen. They just, for whatever reason, we don't know. So I agree. The more you can do in the lesson time, the better. Okay. Are there any resources that I didn't mention that you would like to highlight for us?
So with Easy Notes, we've got our magnet boards and our scale blocks, but we also have some really good rhythm resources. So we have a set of rhythm blocks, which they're kind of just like 3-dimensional flashcards. So they're like long blocks that you can flip around and they have different rhythms on each side of them. And a neat thing about them is that there are different time signatures that go along with it. So there's a small little time signature block, and the length of the block represents the time signature. So a 3/4 block is going to be a little shorter than a 4/4 block. So that's another good just hands-on tool and a way to show students that like all these rhythms equal something different, that they're not all exactly the same. So we love those. And then on the magnetic boards, there's also a fit a rhythm insert that comes along with it. And so it's got some like empty measures on it. And then there's magnetic notes that fit into it. And those all are kind of proportionate so like a whole note is the longest and it takes up the full measure. And then like 4/4 notes fit within the whole note space. So that's another really great hands-on learning tool. So I found that one of the things that I really love about all these Easy Note products are that it just gets the kids working in so many different ways using lots of different modalities. So it's really hands-on, but it's very visual at the same time. And there's a lot of times I'll use them kind of all at the same time. Like we'll set up a scale on the scale blocks and we'll write it on the staff board, and we'll play it on the piano, or we'll set something on the keys on the piano to represent where the notes are. So I think that the more ways that we can get this information coming into the kids, the more memorable it becomes. Just because that one way that you may have learned it might not stick with your students.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that idea of combining the different resources as well. I've been trying, I don't know if I'm being successful yet, but trying to do more improvisation activities where I incorporate things like the rhythm puzzle. Like you build your rhythm and then go and play a little improv thing in that rhythm, or something like that, where I'm combining them playing something in a hopefully non scary way, I guess, with one of the tools. This has been so great to talk to you, Megan. I feel like I could talk to you all day, but I want to make sure I give you a chance to tell listeners where they can find all of these products and learn more about what you're doing.
Yeah, so verypiano.com is the spot to find all of the Easy Note resources in our online shop. There's a link right at the top of the page to go to the shop. And then I'm on Instagram under Very Piano, and then on Facebook, it's Megan's Piano Lessons and Very Piano blog are combined into the same page.
Okay, great. And it's Megan, Megan, right? Yeah. Okay. Great.
And
well, thank you.
I should mention teachpreschoolmusic.com too. I mentioned that earlier, but yeah.
Yes, we don't want to leave out the preschoolers. Well, thank you so much for giving your time today and sharing all of these valuable resources with us. I loved talking to you, and I hope to talk again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm so glad that I was able to connect with Megan today, and I hope that you enjoyed learning about her studio and the resources that she sells. I encourage you to check out her websites to see what she has available. That's the end of the show for this week. Next week on the podcast, I'll be giving you an update on the things that I said back in January that I was taking with me into 2025. So if you haven't listened to that episode, you might want to take a listen so you can find out next week how I'm doing on my goals for 2025. I'm Rachel Ehring, and you've been listening to the Top Music Piano Podcast. I'll talk with you soon.
How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages, both now and into the future? I created our Top Music Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support, and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts, and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, Top Music Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today.